10 different Excel functions, and for each one of these Excel functions, we're going to use a different and practical example. So let's learn step by step from scratch how can we use these 10 different Excel functions with a practical example for each one of these functions. I'm going to start here with the sum function because every time we need to add up some values, do some math in the Excel spreadsheet, and the sum function is a function that can really help us out to automate tasks and can really help us to save time. So look here, I have a practical example with date, order ID. It's basically a sales report, customer, product, quantity, and total. So let's say I want to know how much I just sold, the total sold. So I need to add up all these values here that make up my total column, okay? To do it, I can basically click here in a specific cell. So let's say equal sign, and then select the first value, plus, add to another value, add to another value, add to another value, and so on, so on. This is one way that I can add up values here in Excel. But look, if this spreadsheet here have 1000 rows, it's going to take me a long time to select row by row to add up all these values. That way, maybe there is a better way to do it, and the sum function can really help us to automate this sum. So look here, let me delete it, equal sign, sum function. I can double click here. In the sum function, I can either select a specific range to sum to add up these values, or let's say equal sign, double click, I can select the entire column. So we're going to click here in the G to select the whole G column, okay, the entire G column. And then I can close parentheses and then press enter. Here we got the correct result, the sum of all the values that make up my column G, $10,187. And basically we're done. This is how can we use the sum function here in Excel. So the first function is done. Let's move on here for another function that is called CountA. The CountA function basically count values. So let's take a look here with a practical example that is basically the same example that we just did before, but here I have a different situation. So we already have here the total using the sum function, but let's say I don't want to know how much I just sold, the total sold, but the quantity of orders. How can I count orders, or how can I count rows? Because in each row here I have a different order. So how can I count how many orders that I have here in my report? So let me show you here how can you use it. Equal sign, CountA, this function right here, double click it, 1, 2, okay. In the same way that the sum function works, here I can either choose, let's say, a specific range, or I can choose the entire row. But here I have a problem, select the entire row. If I select the entire row, my CountA function is gonna count my title, my header, as a value itself. So it's gonna add up 1 unit more than I actually have here in my orders, because it's gonna count like this. For example, here I have a blank spot, so 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But I don't want to count the header, because a header is not actually an order, it's just the name of the column. So that way here in this specific example, yes, I can select a specific range. So all the values that I have here within the order ID column, okay? So I'm gonna select here all these informations, all this data, okay, to the last row. Then I can come back here, close parentheses, and then press enter. Here we got 62 orders, and I can use basically the CountA function to count any type of information, any type of data that I have here in my spreadsheet. So if you need to count anything, you can use the CountA function. Another function that is similar to the CountA function is CountBlank. But instead of count actually values, the CountBlank is going to count blank cells. It's going to count the voids, the lack of information, the cells that have nothing inside. So this is what the CountBlank function is going to do for you, okay? So here I have a practical example with a bunch of student names, student ID, and a lecture subscription assignment, let's say that way. And here, the number of now subscribers must be less than 30%. So as I have here the OK that indicates to me how much students have been subscribed to a lecture, I can count, let's say, the blanks, and then I can check if the blanks respond to a value that is less than or equal to 30%. If so, it's okay. I can do here, let's say, now subscribes quantity, instead of using the equal sign CountA function, because the CountA function is going to count the data that I have. any cell that I have any type of information within inside, okay? But because I don't have here any type of information, let's say in this blank cell here, I cannot use the CountA to count voids. I need to use equal sign CountBlank function because it's gonna count the numbers of empty cells. Okay, so double click here, and then as the sum function, as the CountA function, I can either select a specific range or I can now select the entire column D, for example, that I'm gonna use here. But instead I'm gonna select a specific range. Okay, so I'm gonna select here all this data within the lecture column. I'm gonna select everyone here. Okay, now I can come back to the beginning of the spreadsheet. I can close parentheses and then press enter. So here we got 20 students and got any type of subscriptions in the lecture, okay? So to calculate, to do the math, how much it is representing percentage, I can do, let's say, equal sign 20 divides by the total amount of students that I have. But let's say, how much students that I have? I don't know. So I need to use here another function to help me with this. Let's say CountA function. Yeah, let's use it. And here, because we are using a formula with a function, we are using it together within the same cell. It's called nested function or nested formula in Excel. When you use a function within a function, a formula within a formula, okay? So 20 divided by CountA, that is gonna count how many students we have, okay? So double click here, and then I'm gonna select the range where I have the student's name to the last row, okay, to here, and then I came back here to the top, close parentheses, and then press enter. Here we got 34.48%. Yeah, it's not good, but we're done here with this third practical example and with this third function. Another function that is very important in Excel is the average function. As we just see before, the sum function can really help us out to add up values in, let's say, an easier and smarter way. The average function can also help us in, let's say, the same way. Because look here, I already have the total that I sold, the quantity order, but let's say now I want to know what's my average ticket. I can do, let's say, equal sign, the total sold divides by the quantity orders that I have. Enter. Okay, so this is my average ticket. But take a look here. To calculate the total, we need to use the sum function. And to calculate the quantity orders, you need to use the CountA function. So here, the average ticket is pretty much easy to do because we already did it before all these previous two functions, okay? This is why it's pretty much easy to do now the average ticket. But let's say you do not have these informations here above. So how can you do the average ticket? You can use the equal sign average function. Double click here, 1, 2, and then we can select, let's say, a specific range, or you can select the entire column. This is what I'm going to do here, okay? So I'm going to select the entire column G, then I'm going to close parentheses and then press enter. And we're done. So $164.31, the same result as we just got before, okay? So it's correct. Another function that is really interesting is the min and maximum. The minimum and the maximum function here in Excel, it can look up in a specific set of values, and then it can return the largest value or the smallest value, okay? So here with this practical example, I have a sales report by week, and then I have the sales itself, and then the salesperson. So let's say I want to know here, what is the largest sales number that I have here? What is the largest one? And of course, what is the lowest one? To do it, instead of checking manually, one by one, row by row, I can use the minimum and the max function. So let's say the highest value sold, equal sign, max, and then I can double click in this function. And here I can either select the entire column, let's say, or a specific range. I'm going to select here the entire column C, for example. And then I can press enter. So my highest value is equal to 44,000. To do the lowest value sold, I can do basically the same thing, but instead of use the max function, I'm going to use the min function. I can double click here to return the smallest value in, let's say, the range that is my column C, for example. I can close parentheses and then press enter. Okay, here we got. So we're done basically with the min and max function. Another function that is really interesting, and we can use it with the min and max function, or with other functions, we can use the VLookup function. The VLookup function is a function that can search for you a result that you are looking for. So let's say here, equal sign VLookup function. The V stands for vertical because it's gonna search in a vertical way, and the lookup stands for search, lookup, okay? So let's say I want to know, instead of just know the highest value sold in the same example that we just did before, I also want to know what is the salesperson that just sold this number right here, that just sold this value. To do it, instead of search manually, so 44,000 for example, let's say it's not that one, not that one. Okay, I can do it manually. Okay, here we got Anna. So the Anna is the salesperson that just sold $44,000. Instead of doing it manually, the VLookup function can do it for me. Equal sign, VLookup function, double click to select 1, 2. What is my lookup value? What is the value that I'm using as my criteria? Is this value right here, okay? 44,000 and 3,800 and so on. Comma. What is my table array? My table array, I need to select the column that I am looking for, and of course all the other columns to the right of this specific column, okay? So let's say you have more than just 2 columns, you're gonna select all the columns that you have in your spreadsheet, okay? Now, comma, and the VLookup function now is asking me what is my column index number. My column index number is gonna be, in this example here, the number 2. Why? Because look here, the first column that I just select is my column number 1. It's always gonna be the column number 1, okay? The first column that you select for your VLookup function. And then second one is gonna be the second, the third one is gonna be the number 3, and so on, so on. So as I want the salesperson to be my result, whenever my VLookup function match the value with the name, so I need to type it in, input the number 2 in my column index number, because the column 2 is the column that I want to as result, okay? So 2, comma. Now we're gonna use an exact match, because I want the VLookup function returns for me and search for this specific value right here, okay? So we're gonna double click here, exactly match, 1, 2, and then close parentheses and then press enter. Here we got Anna. And whenever, let's say I change this value right here, insert another value here, the VLookup function is gonna automatically be updated for me. And I can do the same thing here for the lowest value sold. What is the salesperson who just sold this value right here? I can use here equal sign, VLookup function, double click to select 1, 2. My lookup value is this value right here to the left, comma. My table array is gonna be all this column here, or I can either select the entire column, so column C and column D, comma. My column index number is going to be the number 2, as we just saw before, then comma again, and I want to exactly match, so double click here, close parentheses, and then press enter. Okay, so Kate just sold this value right here. Okay, good. So now we just learned how to use the VLookup function. And another function, interesting one, is the if function in Excel, because the if function in Excel is also a function that can help us to automate tasks. So let's say here I have a spreadsheet, a stock control, an inventory report with the date, the quantity sold, the product, the unit price, the ID, and the status. Here in the status, I need to fill it in the products that I'm gonna continue to work with. But there's many products here that do not sold that well in this month, so I'll not work with these products anymore. That way, I'm gonna do a phase out of these products, okay? And instead of just filling in manually row by row and check here the quantity sold row by row and see if it's met with my criteria or not, I instead can use the if function to help me to automate this task. So let's say any product that just sold less than or equal to third, I will not work with this product anymore, okay? So less than or equal to third, I will not work with this product anymore. The item 2 is a product that I will not work anymore because it's sold a value that is less than or equal to third. In this case, it's 16, so it's less than third. The item 8, for example, the item 11 sold nothing. So I can use here the if function to help me automate these status columns. Equal sign, if function, want you to select, want you. My logical test is the first thing that if function asks me. So my logical test here in this scenario is going to be if this value right here is less than or equal to, pay attention to the symbol that I just used here, less than or equal to, okay? Less than or equal to third, comma. If it's true, if this criteria right here is met, what I'm gonna do here? The value, if it's true, is gonna be, let's say, open quotations mark, phase out, for example, close quotations marks. It's always important when you type it in a text within a function, you need to put this text in between quotations mark, okay? Comma. If my criteria is not met, so it's because my product just sold more than 30 units, so it's okay, so it's good. Open quotations, okay, close quotations mark, close parentheses, and then press enter. Here we got the first result. I can just click here in the down right corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down to make sure all the rows contain the same function. And as you guys can see, we already got here the correct result. So this product here are not work with this product anymore. And this one right here too, this one right here, and this one right here. So okay, we automate this task. A task that maybe could take me a long time to complete. And if you have, let's say, a spreadsheet that have more rows than I have here, 1,000, 2,000 rows, you're gonna see that in just 1 minute, you can complete this task. Another function that is interesting to learn is the SumIF function. The difference between sum and SumIF function in Excel is the sum function is going to add up all the values that you just select in a range, okay? It's going to add up all the values. But the SumIF function is only adding up the values that met with a criteria that we just specified, okay? So let's take a look here. I have basically, again, a sales report with the salesperson name. In this particular scenario here, I want to use the salesperson as criteria, as my condition. So I want to know how much the Will sold, how much the Anna sold, the Brian, the Kate, and so on, so on. I can do it manually. I can take here the Will sales and add up with this one right here and add up with this one right here. But maybe it's not smart to do it manually. Maybe we can use, instead of using the sum function to sum all this C column, all this range that make up my sales column, instead I can use the SumIF function to just sum the values that match with a criteria, for example. So here to the right, I have the salesperson's name and then the total sold. I'm gonna fill it in here, the total sold, with the equal sign SumIF function. So double click here, 1, 2. First thing that SumIF function is asking me is the range of my criteria, the range of my condition. The range that I'm looking for my criteria is going to be my column D. I can either select the specific range or also the entire column D, okay? I'm going to select the entire column D, comma, and then what is my criteria? So I want to add up all the values that correspond with the Will. This is my criteria. Will is my first criteria. And then, comma. Now, what is my sum range? My sum range is going to be my entire column C. Now I can close parentheses and then press enter. So here we got as result, not the total sold in overall, but just the value sold by Will. Click, hold, and drag down, as you guys can see here. Now all the rows contain the same function. And we're basically done with the SumIF function. And now we know what is the difference between the sum function and the SumIF function. The last but not less important is the CountIF function in Excel. The CountIF function, as we just said before, the count function or the CountA, CountBlank, and one more time, here we have a if append to a function. So SumIF, CountIF, and so on, so on. And every time that you have an if in a function is because you can add a criteria to the function. Here, instead of using the count function to count all the values that we just select in a range, I can just count the specific values that match with the criteria that I'm gonna insert here. So let's say I have here all my customers' names, and I want to know what is the most loyal customer, let's say. What is the customer that has just bought the most here with our company? So I want to count not all the orders that I have, but just the orders that correspond with Patrick customer, okay? And then the Audrey, and then the Nicholas, and so on, so on. So let's start here. Instead of using the equal sign CountA function, because the CountA function is going to count all the values, all the data within the range that I just select, I'm going to use instead the CountIF function. I can double click here, 1, 2, okay? The first thing that the CountIF function is asking me is the range. What is my range? What is the range that I want to count? The range that I want to count here, it cannot be the column B, the column E, the column C. It needs to be the column D, because we also going to use the column D as criteria. Look, for example, it's going to count this first cell right here. Yeah, because the text within the cell is Patrick. But, and this cell right here, Audrey, no, because it's not Patrick. Okay, so whenever the value match with the criteria that we just selected before, it's going to count. Okay, so I'm going to select here the entire column D, and then comma, and now I can select here the Patrick name. Close parentheses and then press enter. Okay, so 11. 11 is not the total orders that I have in overall here in my report, but just the orders that Patrick bought. And to make sure here all the rows contain the same function, I can just click here in this down right corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down. That way I'm done. So as you guys can see here, all my customers are pretty loyal to my company, but I can highlight here the Patrick and Audrey because they both just bought 11 times here with my company, okay? And let's see if it works. So let's say here, Kevin just bought 10 orders. But if I came in here and delete the Kevin name, let's see what's going to happen here. Okay, so it's changed to 9. Yeah, it's automatically worked for us, guys, and it's also going to be automatically updated. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video with these 10 practical examples on how to use 10 functions in Excel. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comment down below, let me know, and I see you tomorrow. As ever, there has a new video. I see you there.